40 nafash v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. And let us sanctify this moment that we are together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen l'chaim. And Shabbat Shalom. Let us consecrate our time and our study together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Guess what? I'm back again. So thrilled to be here. Where are we? We are in the book of Leviticus, for those of you who haven't been keeping up. And a little later in the book, we will find that we will enter into what we call the Holiness Code. But we're not quite there yet, but everything is leading up to that, sort of preparing us for this moment when we can feel God's presence, to understand what it means to live in a holy society, a sacred place where we would, how we speak to each other, how we live among each other, where God would want to dwell among us. And as we will read a little bit later, Kiddushim Tihiyu, that you shall be holy, for I am holy. So this whole idea of holiness is all woven in throughout our studies together, and it begins today. Well, it started actually beginning of Leviticus. And when we say Kiddushim, it comes from the root Kedusha. Kedusha means generally translated as holiness, something that is set apart, something that is distinguished from each other, something that is elevated, and apart from the normal routine. But when we hear holy, we might think of something else. When we think of holy, we might think of a meditation space. We might think of religious spaces. We might think of yoga at the top of a mountaintop, something very serene and peaceful. But the Torah is saying something else, that holiness is Kedusha, something that is separate and apart. And we're going to see how that's playing out here, because the Torah is understanding something fundamental, that there are so many different parts of life and living. There are the celebrations and the mountaintop experiences, but there are also the everyday experiences, the times when we are not feeling well, when illness takes over, when anxiety gets in the way, when the stresses of life prevent us from moving on, when things happen in the world that we have to deal with. And in those times, it is not, you don't necessarily feel holy. You don't feel uplifted and spiritual as we might imagine. But the Torah is refusing to leave those moments out of the conversation of holiness. So, why? Of course, because it's all part of the human experience. And so the question is, how do we create or sustain a sense of holiness in the midst of those realities, in the midst of those times when it feels less than holy, when we are being pulled away from anything that feels meaningful or spiritual? So what we are going to do is we're going to begin in Leviticus, in this Tazria Mitzorah, which is all about eruptions and disruptions and really fun stuff that B'nai Mitzvah students really start creeping out about, and rabbis who have to teach it on Saturday morning aren't so thrilled about it either, but we're going to find some meaning in it. We're going to begin on Leviticus 13:47 to 59, and it's in the Plout, if you're following along on page 837. I have all the pages there for you, so we're going to confine our studies today to one page of text, including, and then plus the text in our Plout. So, who's our first reader? I think you are. Tag it. Let's put this on. Here, I'll let you do it. I don't know if it's on, just check. So just by way of recognizing we have two mics here, and we're going to be passing it around so I can do my little exercise for the day, right? Okay. So you're gonna read. Let's say you're gonna read from 47 to 50 through 51, and then we'll pass it on.
When an eruptive
Loud.
When an eruptive affection occurs in a cloth of wool or linen fabric, in the warp or in the woof of the linen or the wool, or in a skin or anything made of skin.
Can you hear, guys? No, I can't either.
Maybe this is not.
Try it again. I heard it click, but maybe you have to put your mouth in it.
No, is that better?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Okay. When an eruptive affection occurs in a cloth of wool or linen fabric, in the warp or in the woof of the linen or the wool, or in the skin or in anything made of skin, if the affection in the cloth or the skin, in the warp or the woof, or of any article of skin is streaky, green or red, then it is an eruptive affection. It shall be shown to the priest. And the priest, after examining the affection, shall isolate the affected article for 7 days.
Okay, let's pass on to, and we'll go to 54.
On the seventh day.
Loud, right in there.
Oh, on the seventh day, you shall examine the affection of the, if the affection has spread in the cloth, whether in the warp or the woof, or in the skin, for whatever purpose the skin may be used, the affection is a malignant eruption, and it is unclean. The cloth.
You gotta go right in there.
Oh, really? That
like
close?
really in there. Well, not with that part.
The cloth, whether warp or woof, in wool or linen, or any article of skin on which the affection is found, shall be burned, for it is a malignant eruption. It shall be consumed in fire. But if the priest sees that the affection in the cloth, whether in warp or in woof, or in any article of the skin, has not spread, the priest shall order the affected article washed, and he shall isolate it for another 7 days.
Okay, wait. Let's pass it to Ed. We got to share the wealth. Real loud, Ed.
And if, after the affected article has been washed, the priest sees that the affection has not changed color and that it has not spread, it is unclean. It shall be consumed in fire. It is a fret, whether on its inner side or on its outer side. But if the priest sees that the affected part, after it has been washed, is faded, he shall tear it out from the cloth or skin, whether in the warp or in the woof. And if it occurs again in the cloth, whether in warp or in woof, or in any article of skin, it is a wild growth. The affected article shall be consumed in fire. If, however, the affection disappears from the cloth, warp or woof, or from any article of skin that has been washed, it shall be washed again, and it shall be clean.
Okay. Such is the procedure for eruptive affections of cloth, woolen, or linen, in warp or in woof, or in any article of skin for pronouncing it pure or impure. Whoa, that's a lot to unpack, kind of gross. But what is the Torah asking of the person here? Let's begin with the person. Yeah. Oh, well, we need a mic.
Here.
Listen, you know how this works. We got to run around.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For me, this is a metaphor for a chance to improve. You don't just throw the thing in the fire the first time it's discovered. You give it 7 days, you try again. You give 7 more days, you try again. And then, I guess, in the end, if it doesn't work out, it goes in the fire. But it struck me as a chance to improve.
Beautiful. Love that. So let's think about let's focus first, because we're going to get into the implications of that. Let's look at what is it asking of the person. What is the Torah asking of us? Richard?
Wake up and pay attention.
What is it? You know how this works.
Wake up and pay attention.
Pay attention.
I think a lot of stuff transpires in our lives that goes on, and we try and internalize it and keep it. And after a period of time, it continues to progress, and then you try and explain it in another way, and then it continues to progress, and then you don't want to say anything about it. You try and ignore it. And what this is saying to us is saying, guys, life happens, and you need to wake up. You need to pay attention. And the other thing that this says to me is about community building. And the reality is we can't deal with this stuff by ourselves. And there are people out there who are trained and skilled and able, and we should say, hey, I need a little help here.
Beautiful. So we have a couple things. We have pay attention. You can't do it on your own. You got to go see somebody. Yep.
In those days, I think most people only had one cloak. So to admit that you have a problem and hand your cloak over, realizing it might be burned, to me that seems like that's asking an awful lot.
You may ignore it. You may I don't want to give this up. Right behind you. What else do we ask? We find that the person has to do.
I was listening today to something that struck me very nicely about the power also to not jump into immediate conclusions and try to solve something, put up the fire without knowing really the magnitude of this. So this Bar Torah was talking about pausing, paying attention, but also pausing and letting things to see whether they evolve into something bigger or whether they are just superficial, and be also willing to have the patience to sit with that issue.
So being thoughtful, being patient, taking a breath. We need that.
Also, coming forward in something that might be embarrassing for the sake of the community.
Nice. Being responsible, not only to yourself, but to the community as well.
I think an important theme is that of isolation, that you have to first separate it until you figure out what's going on.
Right, so beautiful. Anybody else before we move on? So we have, wait, one more. Isn't there one over here?
One thing to watch here is the underlying philosophy of medicine in this ancient time. They're trying to relate it all to earth, fire, air, and water. These are the ways that they taught medicine, that all things could be explained in terms of the interaction of the four humors. So we got fire, we've got water, and the clothing is earth. I don't know about air yet. Maybe that will appear later.
Can I say something?
Why not turn to another?
To me, looking back at the times, people probably didn't wash their clothes every day like we're accustomed to putting on clean underwear, clean clothes on a daily basis. And so clothes could get mold and other things, in them, since they weren't really cared for the way in modern times we would. But it's kind of just an interesting stepwise progression of what you would do.
Right, so we see that this is a part of everyday life. It was just, this is what they dealt with. So they had to be vigilant. They had to pay attention. They had to take a breath and assess the situation. They couldn't do it alone. They had to engage a professional, the priest in this case, and be thoughtful about how they were going to take care of the situation. Somebody said with concern for the community. All these things are important for them to do it. And then again, to reevaluate it over time to see how it's going. It's like going back to the doctor, to check and make sure everything is going well. So what is the priest actually doing in this process? You can't just talk without a microphone because then they can't hear us online. Neither can everybody else here.
To me, it's almost like a medical journal. This is how you treat this. How do you take care of the mold? And the priest is looking at it and saying, this is leprosy. This isn't leprosy. Here's our procedure. It's basically a procedure, and the priest is acting as giving the diagnosis.
Right. I'll pass it behind you. So yes, we're seeing a diagnosis here, an evaluation, also taking a breath and just saying, okay, let's look and see what this is, yeah?
And I understand the importance of a cloak, and it could have been the only one and what have you, but it's not a person. So that guy has some mold in his coat, so that's his problem. You know, that comes back to the community, because it becomes a community thing where even the priests are diagnosing and everything. Because if you think about it in modern times, while you might say that's that person's problem, you might buy them a new coat, like, you know, a little tzedakah there, or what have you, but it's just kind of a strange way to fawn over a piece of clothing.
Well, maybe it does relate to the fact that, you know, these things can get out of whack, but I think that it's also going to something that we may not be discussing here, and that's the idea that this is something that is, well, it's the overall understanding of it, that it's impure. It's impure to be in a sacred space. So if the person is touching it or the article of clothing is touching it, then it is rendered impure and they can't participate in religious life. That removes them and separates them automatically. So they're trying to avoid that, right? So we're trying to keep them in the loop and also not to prevent it from spreading throughout the whole community. Will you pass the mic down? What else is the priest doing?
So where did the priest get his wisdom from? Obviously, there was no technology or test run like today. Yet, we are doing the same thing today after so much testing and coming to the same conclusion to, you know, not spread contamination going through the community. And I see this as God was the wisdom. That's where all the wisdom comes from. Did they really understand what they were doing? So I see that that's the way we trust God even today. We don't understand it, but He's the God that knows us all, knows everything. And if we listen to Him, we don't have to understand everything, but we follow Him and trust Him.
Well, at least through the eyes of, and the expertise, so to speak, of the priest who is representing, in the eyes of God, the idea that we have to make sure to evaluate, to be that front person, and to make sure that our community is member sacred. It said something at the beginning, Kiddushim Tihiyu, that you shall be holy, right? So what is it that keeps a system holy? This is a process for determining what's holy and what's not holy. Beautiful. So the priest, just to kind of review, is reviewing, taking a breath, making sure, evaluating the situation, giving his prescription for what has to happen, going back and reevaluating. Remember, there's a point person here, so it's nice to have that personal contact with somebody that you know you can go to, that you can trust. Good so far? Okay, and so why might that matter? Why would it matter that we have this front person? Why would it matter that we have a designated person that we need to bring things to when they don't look quite right? What do you think? It's right next to you.
I think it's important that there be a mediator or contact between ourselves and God, so that there's consistency, that it's not my consideration or Marlene's or Carol's, that there is a consistency and a standard, excuse me, so that it's not like, well, you said and she said and he said, but God said. Mm-hmm. The standard exists. And that we don't go off on wild tangents. We're consistent in how we do the process. That it's done the same way. That if there's a spot, a mold, something that's gone slightly awry, that we're consistent in how we do it for Nancy, how we do it for Carol, yep, how we do it for Marlene, and that it's not prejudiced one way or the other. And so as a society, we are all even together, and that we can grow and become more holy together, because that's the whole purpose, that we become a holy people and not fighting against each other.
Beautiful. So, a process, all of that. And then that we have a system, a process, and right. Anything else? So why does all this matter that we have a process? Why does it matter that we have to the system where we have to take an article of clothing that we are suspect of that may have something on it to the priest? What can happen to society? What can happen? It can spread. The little piece of something that Richard noted that we could see or possibly be suspect of could spread. It could take over. It could become more serious. It could be personal. It could affect the whole community. It could shut down the community. Like a lot of things. And also to prevent that hysteria, that sense of, the unknown. We have a system in place, and that is why that this really matters, because it could spread. It also becomes harder to contain, and maybe even harder to ignore. So the Torah is paying attention to something that is not the person themselves, but something outside of them, and that's important to note. Maybe the question for us is not what this is, but how to think of it in terms of our lives today. If we did that, what are the disruptions shaping the environments that we inhabit today? This is when Torah becomes real, guys. Okay? So if we think of something outside of our bodies that has become disruptive, is erupting, is percolating something that doesn't look quite right. How do we global warming. Great. What else? COVID, infections, illnesses, yeah. Diseases. What else? Oh, hate, definitely. Next. What else is in the environment? Anti-Semitism. What else is going on? Think of the environment. Like we said, environmental, the water, the air, the food that we eat, the pesticides, the insecticides. I mean, the list can go on about the things that could impact us on a personal level and then on a communal level, and things that we need to be paying attention to. This can be related, we can relate this to the Torah. And how do we pay attention when we first see a sign that something's not going right? Are we responsible enough to pass it on to somebody? Can we take a breath and really take this in and assess the situation? Can we be responsible about what we do with the information? Do we recheck it? Are we following through? Are we thinking about the larger community and the next generation? All of these things are what the Torah is telling us about something that's erupting outside of ourselves that we're concerned about. And when these disruptions appear, what would it look like to respond with that same care, that same sense of patience and responsibility in Torah? Think about that. We take it seriously, we don't avoid it, we pay attention, we take responsibility rather than ignoring it, addressing things before they spread, slowing down before we react, seeking guidance and expertise, responding thoughtfully, not emotionally, recognize the impact beyond ourselves. How many times have we said, I'll take a long shower. It's not gonna bother anybody else. I'm gonna throw away I'm gonna use plastic and throw it into the environment. Not affecting anybody else. It's me. So we see that our actions, our behaviors impact how the rest of the community responds and how it impacts them as well. Good? Okay. So the Torah is showing this process of way of responding. Yeah, Jorge.
I just have a question in this analogy or transposing this concept of the illnesses of today. In the Torah, there's a point of contact, and it's like a more specific basically it's like if one person gets sick and they come, then everybody can get sick, so we have to take care of that. Like, is there an intermediary, like, because I feel like it's very abstract, like this interpretation.
Well, I'm trying to extrapolate it to see how we can apply it to our lives today. We, as was noted, we wash our clothes. We don't see these things on our garments that we would, although I will say that 30 years ago, I had an eruption of mold in my home. I mean, living in South Florida, we have that. That is a disruption, and that needs to be taken care of. It started off small, and then my entire banister was blue with mold. It's disgusting. It takes us out of our norm, and it disrupts our lives, right? Okay, so Rashi pushes us to see something more. What happened if that process is ignored or not taken seriously? Where are we in the reading? Jorge, you want to read the next Rashi on Leviticus 13? It's on your sheet, on the handout.
The afflictions first appear on the house. If ignored, they appear on garments. If still ignored, they appear on the body.
Okay, so what's Rashi saying will happen if this isn't addressed? Ed.
Thank you. If you ignore the initial signs, things will not go away, they will get worse.
It'll get worse. It will. And it'll get worse by proceeding where?
From outside in.
Outside in. Beautiful. What else? What else do we see here? What is Rashi saying? Is it going to stay the same? It's going to get progressively worse, right? Okay, so what would the priest be doing here? Again,
Well, initially monitoring and seeing whether, in fact, the condition does get worse.
yeah. Monitoring, the same idea that we're monitoring it. We are evaluating, we're taking a breath, we're trying to see how that happens, and we're going to assess how we should proceed with it, and the same idea. What do you think that, wait 1 second. Okay, so Rashi, our dear Rashi, is saying that this is going to get worse. We cannot ignore it. Yeah. I think it's on.
I think fundamentally this is saying that if you ignore the rule of law, that there's a corruption there that will grow.
Exactly. There's something there that needs to be noticed, and it's going to grow. It's going to you think it's on the outside, and if you let it go because it's not my problem, it's somebody else's, and what have you, it's going to affect you. It's going to come back to you, to haunt you. Okay? Yeah.
It also occurs to me that this is very, very practical. I mean, we're extrapolating to make it for the present, for our present. But at the time, this was a very realistic problem in the community. And the Torah isn't some highfalutin anything. It's dealing with issues that were problems for the community at the time. And so, as you give the example of the mold in your house. I was wondering, in the desert, did they have mold? But they obviously had something that affected their clothing and their homes.
They had other things.
The Torah here is a very honest look at life at the time and how to live a good life and a healthy life. And they can call it clean, you can call it whatever word you want to use for it.
Yeah.
But they were trying to keep a community together and a healthy community in all ways.
Right. So it is practical. This is life. And this is not just something in ancient life, as we saw. We can apply it to our lives today. And that is a living Torah. It is practical. It is how we deal with everyday life and how to infuse everyday life with holiness. So Rashi, yes, Jason.
So many of the comments we're all making this morning seem to point back to Chazal's understanding of what Tarat is, namely a symptom of Lashon Hara, right? And the idea that this evil, negative speech affects the speaker, affects the hearer, and affects the subject of the speech. And if we're speaking of extrapolating, I mean, if we start from there, all the problems we've brought up have their source in that kind of an idea.
Beautiful. So you brought up two different parallel ideas. One is that maybe there's a reason for the eruption, and that we're going to kind of hold off for a moment because we are going to get to that. But the other is that how it impacts, how like there's a ripple effect in the community, and things that are erupting, things that are not right, tend to get worse and percolate outward. Right behind you.
I think what Rashi is telling us is that if we choose to ignore it, it becomes very personal and it gets closer to us. And if it happens to a neighbor and we choose to ignore it, it's going to spread to us. And it spreads within the community. So it's our responsibility as a member of the community to ensure that we live in a healthy environment.
I love that. So you have brought in like the deeper meaning of this, the idea that what affects you affects me. We're neighbors. We are to love each other, to protect each other, to be responsible for one another. Maybe he was thinking that, and I love that idea. But practically speaking, it will grow. Something doesn't stay the same. It has the potential, at least, to grow, to get out of whack, to affect other people, and move and spread. And that's exactly where the Torah takes us next. Because what begins at a distance doesn't always stay there. If it isn't addressed, it moves closer, and eventually, as you said, it reaches the person, it reaches the body. So we're going to listen to see how the Torah describes it with our next text. Lauren, if you want to read text 3, Leviticus 15:1. In your text, tell me what page it's on. It's all right, it's there. On Cloud 852. Oh, you don't have the mic? We'll break this up a little bit.
The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when any man has a discharge issuing from his member, he is unclean. The uncleanliness from his discharge shall mean the following: whether his member runs with a discharge or is stopped up so that there is no discharge, his uncleanliness means this: any bleeding on which, any bedding on which the one with the discharge lies shall be unclean, and every object on which he sits shall be unclean. Anyone who touches his bedding shall wash his clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until evening."
I'm going to pass it to Richard, please.
Well, I don't know if it's on purpose or by accident. I have no idea where you are.
Oh.
6.
It's okay, I got to replace it.
Whoever sits on the object, on an object on which the one
With a discharge?
Is
Is it throwing you?
Remains unclean until evening. Whoever sits on an object on which the one with the discharge has sat shall wash his clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until evening. Whoever touches the body of one with the discharge shall wash his clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until evening. If one with a discharge spits on one who is clean, this is wonderful.
You see why B'nai Mitzvah kids
I wonder what 13-year-old boys have to say.
Right, exactly.
One with a discharge spits on one who is clean. The latter shall wash his clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until evening. Any means for riding, which one with the discharge has mounted, shall be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until evening. Whoever carries such things shall wash his clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until evening.
You want to pass it to Hillary? Let her finish it off?
I'll finish up.
Okay, you do it.
If one with a discharge without having rinsed his hands in water touches another person, that person shall wash his clothes, bathe in water, and remain unclean until evening. An earthen vessel which one with a discharge touches shall be broken, and any wooden implement shall be rinsed with water.
This reminds me of the Talmud. It's like, the Talmud drives me crazy. And this is what this is. It's like, and if this, and it's like every single permutation is like enough of it.
It's so detailed.
Exactly.
Detailed, yes.
And you need to report it to the Department of Health. By the way, also, if you go to a doctor to try and figure this out, you have to know.
Wait, you know what? We need a microphone. Let's do this. Thank you, Hillary. I didn't even ask a question, and you're bustling with.
If you go to a doctor, if there were doctors around there, can you hear me? You have to know this, who they are. Like, for instance, an internist knows everything, but does nothing. The surgeon...
That's what the surgeon says.
That's
Does nothing, but does everything.
Right, that's right. And the surgeon knows nothing, but does everything. But the maven, the pathologist, he knows everything, he does everything, but too late.
No. Love that. Love the humor here. Okay, one second. I didn't even ask the question.
So, maybe, I mean, here, it's ancient times, and they were going through the motions, because they realized that water wasn't going to do anything. We didn't have soap yet. I'm thinking, when I'm hearing this, and water, I'm thinking, yeah, that didn't help anything. It probably still spread, but everyone was going through
We need
the motions.
antibacterial soap.
Yeah, I mean, water, if you
Yeah.
think about that in modern times, and you say, we're just going to wash it in water, it's still unclean.
Yes? Okay, so I know that you have something to say. You want to say it? Okay.
Yeah,
It's on.
to me, this is telling something a little bit different. We're talking about, in this case, a discharge and how it affects all sorts of other things, and your clothes, the vessel that it touched, the bedding. But I think it's talking in a broader sense about other things other than a discharge. It's talking about an infection in the community, whether it's a rumor going on or whether it's a medical thing that they can relate to an exact procedure to get rid of it. But I'd written to somebody the other day, my uncle used to say, 1 drop of ink spoils a gallon of milk. And this is that 1 drop of ink, and it spoiled all these other things. So we've got to look at it. They're giving us a procedure for one thing, but it's leading to, hey, look at the broad picture of your actions and how they're affecting everybody else.
Beautiful. Love that. We'll leave this here for a second. So,
Just following up on that, it appears that this would be something that is personal to one person alone, and it could be a private thing. But in fact, it is not just a private thing. It can affect many, many others.
for the same way, I guess that the cloth doesn't affect just the person who's got the cloth. It can spread and
But
touch
in this case,
other
it's
things.
something that's very, very personal, and what would otherwise be a private thing is not private.
It can't be private. Okay, so how do these things, these moments when something in our body is disrupted, make us feel? Oh, I don't need to use this. How do they make us feel? When something is erupting in our bodies, this kind of goes to the personal, right? What does it make us feel? How do we feel? I know that we've all had something happen to us where we have felt drawn away from society, from family, from life. We have an illness, a disease, something happened to us where we feel we are removed. How does that make you feel when you are like that, in that state, in those moments? Lonely, isolated, worried, broken. These are real human emotions. What else? Anxious, yes. We are feeling all those things. Maybe even embarrassed. You know, there's some embarrassment with some of these things that they're mentioning. We feel vulnerable, exposed. You know, somebody said worried. Yeah. Maybe not even feeling whole, not feeling ourselves, feeling out of whack with what is normal in our lives. So these moments are not just physical disruptions. They impact us emotionally and spiritually, and they impact how we feel about ourselves, how we relate to the world, what we do in the world. And often they are moments when we feel furthest from anything that feels holy. Think about those moments when you've had those things that you've all described, or thinking about those moments. Do you feel holy and spiritual? Do you feel like, oh yes, I'm feeling God's presence in this moment? Yes, Kenya.
When I used to read this parsha,
Uh-huh.
I used to think that, oh my God, how awful that we cast out the person, or we set out and outside the environment or whatever. But on second thought, I think, given what we're talking about and how the person feels when they are in this situation, one of the things that you feel like is being out of control. And it's actually quite reassuring that there is a process, that there is a process in place where, you know, you do this first, and that may work, and then it will stop. If not, there's the second step, and if that works, then you stop. And it gives you a step-by-step process of this being dealt with.
Yeah.
Not just for yourself, but for the community at large.
Exactly.
And I think that renders some relief in some way for everybody if we're talking about how people feel.
Exactly. So knowing that there is a system, a process in place, that it provides that relief, that sense of knowing what to do. You know, when somebody dies, we feel disoriented. We're not knowing what to do, how to think, how to react. And so knowing that there are prescribed laws and commandments that we have to follow helps us follow a process, a system, and not have to think so much. We know what we have to do. That's what we have to do. This is what we do. Yes, sir.
Actually, she covered most of it.
Oh.
But helplessness is what you feel. At the bottom on the thing is a helplessness, and you're afraid, and you don't know what the next step is.
Yes.
So you have to pull yourself out, but you need help.
We do.
You need to reach out for help.
Yes.
To give you these steps or guide you out of this terrible feeling of loss.
Yes. Hold on to that because you probably might have something else to say. Oh, Hillary does. I'll give it to you 1 second.
How do you reconcile this with be fruitful and multiply? It doesn't say a discharge when you're alone looking at Playboy magazine. I mean, it's like a discharge at any time. So, I mean, it could be sex, right? So, so it's saying sex makes you unclean, but then they're telling us to be fruitful and multiply. So it doesn't seem to go together.
It's unclean for purposes of spiritual enlightenment, for doing sacred things in the temple with the priest. That is preventing you from doing that. So you've just been in this moment of heightened love and connection with your spouse. You're not thinking about something you may have to bring to the temple. It's taking you out of that, right? Hillary, will you pass the?
I related it mostly on the fruitful and multiply and the relationship with it because it was a missed opportunity to create life.
Oh, well, if it was done.
So, because you are mandated to create life, any moment that the opportunity to create life is missed, either because of the period or because of, then that would be unholy, because it's against that concept.
Oh, beautiful. So I know that there's some other hands. Give me 1 sec, because I want to keep moving on in our text here. Why does the Torah choose to speak right here in these moments? Why? Why is it that there is something to be said here, and spending a lot of time, somebody noted, with the details of what's going on here, with eruptions and secretions and all that stuff? Why? What is it? Jorge, we don't have a mic. Do you have something to say?
I had wanted to say something. I don't know if it answers your
You
question.
can, yeah.
But for the time, these were very unique things that telling people were not clean. People didn't spend that much time worrying about how clean their clothes were, how clean their bodies were. It's a very unique thing. And whether rightly or wrongly, in the Middle Ages, Jews were accused of being responsible for the Gentiles getting the plague because they thought the Jews didn't get it to the same extent. I don't know if that's true or not, but what is true is that the Jews were much cleaner and buried their dead outside of the city, which was also another positive thing.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I mean, we cheated, we kept reading a little bit, so we cheated, we kept reading, and I don't think...
You went ahead?
I don't think at this church is sexual. I think it's more like anything, like a cut or like any bacteria. So I think this is preventing disease. And to answer your question, I think this could be related to a change of season where a lot of people would get sick from, because you ask why now? Like why now during the year? Is that?
So it's part of life. It's part of the seasons of life. It's part of what we deal with. We can't avoid it. So the Torah is saying, hey, we can't avoid it. We need to address the situation. And I think that that is the key part here, that it's not only, holiness is not only in perfect moments when we're on top of the mountain, we're in our sanctuaries of life, but in real life, in real moments of what we're dealing with. Yes, Paul.
These laws were given to us in the desert before entering Israel, because Israel doesn't tolerate, the land doesn't tolerate any uncleanliness. And so they want people to get it out of their systems before entering the land.
Yes, maybe, but if you think about it, these are not things that are just specific to the desert. These are things that we all can relate to in our lives today, in terms of illness, in terms of eruptions that we have, and any of the things that they even listed we deal with. And those are things that take you out of your normal, take you out of feeling less than whole, okay? So, again, they are part of our human experience, and the Torah is refusing to leave the conversation of holiness, about holiness, away from this. These are normal, everyday life, things that happen in life, and they must all be about holiness. Even in the midst of disruption, when things feel disorienting, isolating, far from anything we would call holy, there still may be something that's not yet visible, or something that might happen that is happening here. And the Torah doesn't only describe what happened, it also builds in a process. So some of the voices in our tradition, as somebody was alluding to, begin to ask a different question of us. And that is, not only what does this feel like, but what might this mean to us, that this is happening? Could these eruptions or these disruptions be connected to something deeper? And Maimonides is suggesting just that. So let's see, I don't know where we are in our reading, but let's move on to reading text 4, Maimonides.
These afflictions are not natural occurrences, but signs and wonders in Israel.
meant to warn them to turn away from harmful behavior.
So I think Jason was talking about Lashon Hara. That could be part of it, that maybe this is the basis of something else that's going on in your life, that this happening. Maimonides is offering one way that our tradition has tried to understand, to make sense of these signs, these experiences. Not necessarily why they happen, but to ask what they may be calling forth from us. What are they asking of us? What are we supposed to pay attention to? So what is Maimonides inviting us to consider in moments like this? What do you think? Diane, you have a mic? Shelley's holding it. Shelley.
So I think this whole journey is about the Israelites becoming a people, and what that means to God is becoming holy. And so I think that it's trying to define what holy means, because it's trying to say that holy is not, I guess to say modern, going to synagogue, observing the rituals. It's being part of a community that looks after each other, that understands what you need to hold yourself together. Because up until now, they're used to thinking of themselves as individual people. What I do doesn't matter. I do this, I do that. What does it matter? We come together sometimes, whatever. But I think it's trying to unite the people in that you're on this journey now. At the end, you're going to be a people that's going to have to govern themselves, both inside their home, outside their home, at the temple, everything. And it's trying to address every little nuance.
Beautiful. So you're describing something that, laying the foundation, if you will, for what this means for us to see the community as a whole and being taken care of ourselves. But I want to make sure that we go forward. And what is Maimonides asking us to consider in these moments?
Right, so at the Peshat level, it seems very simple. There's a discharge, separatum, it's kind of like a medical approach. But if you really look deeply, why is this man having a discharge? In normal conditions, will not have a discharge. He might have gone out of wedlock and have relationships. So this really goes into infidelity. And that's like a bigger thing, the infidelity of marriage. And if you read Malachi, at the very end of Malachi's only 3 chapters, he talks about that one of the biggest things is the infidelity, is what causes like God not to listen to the people of Israel. So I think it's going more deep than just what's at the surface.
Okay, beautiful. So again, still, Maimonides is saying they're meant to warn them to turn away from harmful behavior. It's a signal for something. It's a wake-up call. It's like something to pay attention to. Hey guys, this is not right. There's something going on here, and there's something deeper going on. There's maybe a cause or a meaning for something, like a warning. Like, pay attention. You need to know what's going on here, and to think about that there's something percolating below that surface. A moment that interrupts us for some reason, and we need to be thinking about that. That's what Maimonides is saying. But I will say that, there's things that feel challenging about that. That's to say that because we do something that he is saying or implying that that's the reason why we have a disease or an illness. That feels very uncomfortable. Does that not bother you? Like, he's saying that this is that there's a reason for this eruption. There's a reason for your illness. There's a reason why things are disrupted in your life. Right? That is a voice that we need to recognize in our tradition. For me, it's like, wait a minute, what? That's the cause? Lashon Hara is what caused my eruption? But if we take all of that out and we say, okay, we're not going to go that far. Let's say that's maybe on the Peshat level, as you said. But we'll take it to another deeper level. Then maybe we can say that, that may be a little too much for us to understand. But if we set aside that blame part, that there's some reason to be blaming for it, we might understand this as something that calls for attention. It gives us a moment. Like when you are sick and you're in bed, you gives you a moment to break from your everyday routine, there's something about having perspective on life, right? It allows you to see things differently. It allows you to take a breath and assess where you're going or priorities or blessings in your life. It allows you to just see things differently. So it might even invite change in our lives. It might allow us to have a different awareness during these moments of disruption. So maybe he's saying, or maybe we can take his thoughts and say, okay, maybe there is something going on here. I needed a time to just have perspective. I needed a time to step back and assess my life. I can see the benefit in having this moment and where it's taking me. So we may not be able to get out of a situation because it's all part of our natural life and living. We can't avoid them. They're just there. But we might be able to listen carefully about what's going on in our lives in the midst of them. We know that they're going to happen, these moments of disruption, these moments of eruption, whatever they are. They can take us out, but they can also be thoughtful and mindful. We can be listening. We can have perception and awareness. So the question that follows from Maimonides, not necessarily in what is this moment asking of me? This moment of asking is giving shape to what happens next. Okay? Not just the experience, but the process of living through these experiences that are part of life and living. We can't avoid them. They happen. And I want you to listen carefully to Susan Sontag. I don't know where we are. Are you on this, Stuart? I think you are the next person. Because this text by Susan Sontag is just about this moment that is just inevitable in our lives and about how we have to wrap our arms around this. Read, what does she have to say?
Okay, text 5, illness as a metaphor. Seeing the whole person. Is that no?
Susan's?
Yeah, he's right.
Okay, there you go.
And
Sorry.
seeing the whole person.
Illness.
Illness is the night side of life, more onerous citizenship. Everyone who is born holds dual citizenship in the kingdom of the well and the kingdom of the sick. Although we all prefer to use the good passport, sooner or later, each of us is obligated, at least for a spell, to identify ourselves as citizens of that other place.
Oh, I love that. Did you hear that? That we all are going to be citizens of one or the other at some point in our lives. And what feels true to you in the way that she's describing this? Feels like a different world, another alternative. It feels surreal, like, what is this? Like the whole world is happening around me and I'm not a part of it, right? Yeah, Richard.
We're under a spell.
Yeah, we're under a
spell. We're under a spell. We're a spell.
Right. And at these times, you're like in survival mode. You're like trying to get through to the other side. I just want to get over this. Yes.
So when we're a citizen of the unwell part and we don't feel spiritual, as you've been saying, it's ironic that that's when we need God's strength the most.
Right? Exactly. So why is the Torah paying so much attention to here in these details? Because it's precisely when we need to have direction, we need guidance, spiritual guidance. We need that moment in our lives. We feel this like loss of control. So when you're in those moments, are you asking what this means or just trying to get through it? Are you, oh, I'm in pain, I can't breathe, I can't do anything. Oh, I feel so connected, I feel so spiritual. You don't, but you're looking. But maybe what we're saying is that even though you're trying to get through it and there's like this sense of survival and you're focusing on relief and not thinking about anything else but like just getting through this all, in this disorientation and this isolation, in those moments, we are just, The Torah is placing us right there for that moment, because in that moment is where something else is taking root. Maybe quietly, maybe invisibly, but within them, without us even knowing it. What we need to ask is, what is shaping in those moments? What determines whether they remain places of distance or places where something sacred can begin to grow? Because the Torah, of course, does not leave that question unanswered. It brings us into another layer of the story. Because when someone is in that place, disrupted and vulnerable and isolated and scared and anxious, feeling far from whole, they are not the only ones in the story. There's also the community. The community is watching. The community is responding. The community is either creating distance or they're drawing close to help that person. So let's listen to what the Torah says next. Are we on Shelley? Or Diane, sorry.
Leviticus 13.
13, 45, 46.
As for the person with a leprous affection, the clothes shall be rent, the head shall be left bare, and the upper lip shall be covered over. And that person shall call out, impure, impure. The person shall be impure as long as the disease is present. Being impure, that person shall dwell apart in a dwelling outside the camp.
Okay, so what does the Torah describe this person doing, and how visible does that make their condition? Someone said, you said it was just so private and no one is going to know about that. Heck, look at what's going on here. You're going to run through the camp saying, impure? I'm impure. I got a disease, guys. I'm here.
Shave their head.
And
shave their head.
And shave their head. It's public. They can't hide from it. Their identity becomes defined by it. It's so vulnerable. They're exposed. What does the Torah require in terms of where this person lives? And how might that feel? Outside the camp. Separated. Isolated. Removed from life. You might feel shame and loneliness, loss of dignity. And what about the community? How might they be feeling or reacting in this moment? It is an opportunity.
How do you respond?
It could be, but when you discover somebody has COVID, what do? You go running for the hills. No, you're not coming over. No, you're not. We're not going out for dinner. We don't. We separate ourselves because we're fearful. We're anxious. But I do love your answer. That's where holiness can begin, where the community can not separate out, but send food, send compassion, show signs of connection so that they're not isolated and lonely and, all that. Because if they're not responsive in those moments, what can happen to the people? They're feeling what? Even more isolated, even more depressed, even more lonely, even more, just out of sorts and out of the connection to community, to relationships, to life in general, to a sense of belonging. So what does holiness look like here for both the person and the community? What does it look like? How can it look like? How can we started the discussion, how can that separation be transformed into something of connection, something where holiness can start percolating? In that moment, when it feels so distant from our lives, the last thing we want or feel is that sense of holiness. What can start happening? What can we start planting the seeds of? Yeah.
Gesture of love and compassion.
Yep. What else? Yep.
Hope.
Hope.
The sun, when you walk through a storm, keep your head up high.
Ha, love that. And don't be afraid. I love that. What's that?
Another thing, there's a musical thing, night on, oh God. A Mountain of Rage. There is this musical thing where it goes crazy at night and all these terrible sounds and everything. And towards the end of that musical selection, there's this silence for a moment and this little beautiful angelic music comes out, representative of God, angel, hope, night on Bald Mountain.
Yeah, so where does that come from
And
here?
that comes from an inside thing that you relate back to this wondrous hope in your heart,
Yeah.
and you will not be alone.
Beautiful. So, you've said so much, but there is this idea that what we've spoken about almost this entire class is about how alienating, how lonely, how disconnected we can feel, how anxious we feel, how we feel judged, we feel, diminished, we feel shame. All those things can be altered by the community, because that's the other part of the story, is that there is community here. And that is what the Torah is telling us, that we need to be present for one another. We need to add those things. So we're not just looking at the condition, we're looking at the person and a community and what happens in that space between them. And I want you to listen to, as we begin to close out our time together, Alan Morinus, who is this beautiful person who teaches Kabbalah, and he says, the sole trait of compassion may be more accurately defined as the inner experience of touching another being so closely that you no longer perceive the other as one separate from you. When we look at another with eyes of judgment, we see only their accumulated deeds and habits, but when we draw closer, we begin to perceive the untainted soul, the image of the divine reflected in them as in ourselves. So what's the difference between, as he is describing, between judgment and compassion? What does judgment create? Distance. What does compassion create? Intimacy, right? Connection. Judgment we put on people. Oh, he's got COVID, he's got cancer, what have you. And what is compassion? Seeing the deeper part, the inside person. Judgment separates, compassion holds, judgment reacts, compassion responds. All these things. So now we can begin to recognize something deeper, that disruption doesn't only happen in one place. It can show up in many ways, in the world around us, in our bodies, and in how a person is held by community. And if that's true, none of us are immune. Every one of us will experience moments that disrupt our lives, that disrupt our bodies and our sense of connection to what feels whole or holy. These moments, the ones that feel the most distant from holiness, may be those very moments in which holiness begins to take root quietly beneath the surface. And what allows it to grow is us. How we hold one another, how we reach out to one another, how we lift somebody up in their times of vulnerability and loneliness. Maybe these are the very moments in which holiness is shaped, the moments in which it is first sown. And maybe this is what our tradition has been trying to teach us all along. Those who sow in tears shall we reap in joy. I want us to enter into those words together by singing Debbie Friedman's version of those who sow in tears. So if you know these words, we're just going to do the chorus. Let us sing these together. It's on the bottom of your page. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Let's do it one more time. Those who sow in tears, will reap in joy. I pray that our community can see those moments of connection in the deepest, darkest parts of our community's lives and be there for each other so that we can turn those moments of darkness into joy. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
There is a lady, Jean Watson,
Uh-huh.
who's the mother of the Caring Moment. And I volunteered at Catholic Care for like 12 years ago. She says this, what if you pause and realize this one moment with this one person is the very reason
It's such
I taught this to my medical students.
What kind of a doctor were you?
Surgeon. No, nothing. But anyway.
I heard that.
But we were taught, we got old timers to teach the old ways.
Yeah.
Kids would understand it.
Yeah.
Rob the most pride coming out of it. It doesn't have to be medicine, it could be spiritual, it could be anything.
Yeah.
You have to be there with
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite.
It's a very Jewish concept.
You know, I want to tell you that a congregant said to me, oh, you're going to Torah Study tomorrow? That's gross. That's such a gross section that I'm just going to stay home. It talks about blah, blah, blah.
Hi, Izzy.
Zapatos.
Thank you.
Allá afuera hay como 24 sillas.